All right, let's dive into this. We're going to go on an incredible journey through how we, as humans, even understand reality itself. We'll look at three totally different ways we've tried to make sense of the world around us, from seeing it as a divine message to something we have to build ourselves, and even, believe it or not, something we can hack.
So where do we start? Well, with an absolute titan of science, Sir Isaac Newton. But what's so fascinating, and what this quote shows, is that his scientific mind was completely intertwined with his theological one. For Newton, prophecy wasn't some crystal ball for seeing the future. Not at all. It was more like a code that, once it was fulfilled, was undeniable proof of a divine plan guiding everything.
And this is really the central question for our entire explainer today. Each one of these ideas, decoding a puzzle, constructing a machine, or hacking a program, represents a radical shift in how we think. And these shifts have profoundly shaped everything in our world, from our politics all the way to our financial systems.
Okay, so let's start with that first framework, this idea that reality is like an intricate puzzle, a divine clockwork, this masterpiece of design from a creator, just sitting there, waiting for us to figure out the rules.
You see, for Newton to understand the universe, you had to read two different but complementary texts. First, you had the book of nature, which you could decode using physics and math. But then you also had the book of scripture, which you understood by studying prophecy. And for him, the elegant simplicity he found in both of them, well, that was the unmistakable signature of a singular, orderly God.
And this right here gets to the absolute heart of Newton's worldview, what we call the design argument. He would look up at the cosmos, at the incredibly elegant orbits of the planets, and he didn't see chaos. He saw a system of such breathtaking perfection that it just had to be the work of an intelligent and powerful being. There was no other explanation for him. So, in Newton's mind, God was the divine mechanic, the ultimate artisan, and his signature, it was the mathematical harmony woven right into the very fabric of creation. Our job was just to uncover these perfect pre-existing laws. But what happens when human chaos gets in the way and seems to disrupt that divine order? Well, that takes us right to our next big idea. Let's see how this builds, because here, the notion is that reality isn't something to be discovered. It's something that must be built by us to save us from ourselves. And that is the pretty bleak diagnosis from the philosopher Thomas Hobbes. He looked at the world and saw a fundamental, terrifying problem. Without some kind of controlling power, humanity just exists in a constant state of war, driven by competition and distrust. A grim picture for sure. So what was his solution? The Leviathan. He argued that we have to use our own ingenuity, what he calls art, to construct this massive artificial state. This artificial man is given absolute power, basically an artificial soul, to force order and provide security where nature provided nothing but chaos.
You see the huge shift here, right? This is a massive turning point. We go from Newton's quest to decode God's perfect, pre-existing reality to Hobbes's project of literally constructing our own artificial reality just to manage our own flawed nature. A really powerful idea, but trust me, the story gets much, much stranger from here.
And this brings us to the third and by far the most radical idea. What if reality isn't something to be decoded or constructed? What if it's something that can be hacked? This very question sets the stage for a collective of thinkers from the late 20th century, the Cybernetic Culture Research Unit, or CCRU for short. For them, the problem wasn't a lack of order or some divine plan we couldn't see. No, the problem was the very structure of reality itself. For the CCRU, linear time, the idea that the past causes the present, which causes the future, that wasn't just some neutral backdrop. They saw it as an alien prison, a rigid structure specifically designed to contain humanity and totally limit our potential. So, how do you escape this prison? Well, they proposed this totally mind-bending concept they called hyperstition. Think about it like this. A superstition is a false belief, right? Well, a hyperstition is a belief, a fiction, that literally makes itself true just by being believed. It doesn't describe the world, it actively rewrites it.
In this worldview, all of history becomes a time war between competing fictions. But the most radical idea here is that last one. The future can cause the past. For the CCRU, a prophecy isn't just a prediction. No way. It's a weapon, fired from the future into the past to change the timeline and force itself to become true.
Okay, I know this all might sound like something out of a wild science fiction novel, but what if we're already living inside these powerful fictions? Let's look at some examples from our own world that might suggest we are.
Just look at our financial system. That number, 95 to 98%, what do you think that is? Well, that's the estimated chunk of all money in the system that isn't physical cash. It's just numbers in a computer, created out of nothing. It's a massive, powerful fiction that only works because we all agreed to believe in it, a belief that shapes nations and starts wars. And you see this battle of fictions playing out in politics, too. The struggle over a nation's history, that's not just some boring academic debate. It's often an assault on history to control the national identity in the present. Is a nation an ongoing project, always trying to be a more perfect union? Or was victory secured at the very beginning, with a fixed identity we have to defend? It's a war of narratives. So what happens when people lose their sense of a stable story, a stable identity? Well, the media theorist Marshall McLuhan warned this creates a really dangerous vacuum. People feel adrift, which can lead to a desperate and often violent quest for identity, making them incredibly vulnerable to powerful news stories that promise to give them a place in the world again. So, we've gone from Newton decoding a divine plan to Hobbes constructing a state to control us to the CCRU claiming we can literally hack the timeline. We're left with a really challenging thought, and here's what you should take away from all this. If our world is actually built on stories, on these hyperstitions, then the stories we choose to believe and the stories we tell, they aren't just entertainment. They are powerful acts of creation. So the only question left is the one on your screen. What story are you telling?